Good morning. I'm Judy Hunt, your practitioner in service today. Welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living in the heart of Las Cruces, where our vision is a world in loving partnership for the good of all. As you can see, since you're now watching on YouTube, we have decided to take a few weeks off from in-person gathering, and we will be revisiting that idea at the board meeting on February 13. So please watch our newsletter and website for updates. It's great to have you all here. I want to welcome anyone watching us for the first time, and please know you can call us with any questions. The numbers are on the website. And we especially want to thank Sarah Benson for providing the special music for our Sunday celebration last week. It was wonderful. Here at the Center for Spiritual Living, we believe in the power of prayer, which we call spiritual mind treatment or affirmative prayer. You can use our prayer request button on the website. Our prayer team, made up of practitioners and the ministers from the 4 New Thought communities here in Las Cruces, gather every week to pray with you. You can also reach the practitioners or the minister for immediate needs. Our phone numbers are on the website. We are happy to support you. Now it is time for song, silence, and prayer.
In this moment, I am grace. Grace is this moment. Grace, grace, grace. This moment is what I am. In this moment, I am peace. Peace is this moment. Peace, peace, peace. This moment is what I am. In this moment, I am still. Still is this moment. Still, still, still. This moment is what I am.
Even though we are apart, we are so blessed by this gathering. We know wherever we are that Spirit is in us, through us, around us, and is us. We are expressing as Spirit. We are so grateful for this time that we take, this time for illumination and inspiration. And I know that each of us in our own places and in our own ways, each of us is blessed by the time spent, by the message, and by just abiding in Spirit. We know that the Spirit is mighty amongst us, that we are Spirit expressing, and that we live in the divine flow of all of the spiritual gifts. We are so grateful for all that we are and all that we have. And so it is. The reading today comes from Ernest Holmes' The Science of Mind textbook, page 447. All people need some form of healing. Most people are unhappy. Few have any realization of permanent peace. We seek fragments when the whole is at hand. How illogical to think that anything can rise higher than its source. The universe is perfect, undivided whole, and healing can take place only when one is unified with it. How can anyone, then, be healed in part? Let us seek wholeness above all else. If we would come to the universal wholeness, we must approach it through the law of its own nature. This means that we must give our undivided attention to the spiritual unit back of all things. Since all else is included in this unit, we find our particular good only through unity with life. This conscious unity makes our mind receptive to completion, since life itself is complete. This perception is always an inner light, for the individual can use only such knowledge as he or she inwardly possesses. In reality, we know God or truth only as we ourselves embody God or truth. And since it is impossible to embody anything outside ourselves, this knowledge must be an inner light. The truth itself is infinite, but we only embody the infinite in degree. To the degree that we do embody reality, we become poised and powerful. And so it is.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Just an expert on what I am not. So many choices, still I can't choose. How can I win when I'm too afraid to lose? There's a voice inside, and it's telling me you can live your magic, you can live the magic, rise above your circumstance. You can live the magic, you can live your magic. It's always one step forward and 2 steps back. When you're running from who you're meant to become, fulfill your promises. You can live your magic. You can live your magic, rise above your circumstance. You can live the magic, you can live your magic, fulfill your promises. You can live your magic, you can live your magic.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Bonnie, the community spiritual leader here at the center, and it is my pleasure to be here with you this first Sunday of February. Well, I don't know about you, but it seems like in my life, things are changing moment by moment. Things are happening in the lives of people in my life, and we're going one way, and all of a sudden we're going another way, and it just seems like everything is in flux and in change. And as I've been contemplating this and sitting with it and working with it in my own reality, I came up with some scenarios that popped into my head as I was picturing the way life feels right now. And so I'm going to share that scenario with you. Imagine that you go into someone's home, maybe a friend, maybe an acquaintance, and when you walk in the middle of the living room is a podium with a beautiful vase on it. And you go over and pick it up to admire it, and you're looking at it, and then all of a sudden you accidentally drop it on the floor, and it breaks. And as you drop it, the owner cries out, "Oh, no, that's a family heirloom." And there it goes. She says, "It's been passed down from generation to generation." How do you respond? How do you respond? What are you going to do in a situation like that? Everything changes so quickly. Do you say, "Oops, well, now I know how important that is to you. I made a mistake. I've learned my lesson. I should have picked it up differently, or maybe I shouldn't have even picked it up at all. But now I know, so it's okay. It's okay." Or maybe you quickly shift gears and you say to the person that owned it, "You know, that thing was old anyway. It was part of your past. We don't want to focus on the past and what's old. We want to focus on the now and what's new. So just let it go. Don't waste your time and energy on that stuff that's old. Anyway, everything's in divine order." Well, you could also say, "It's all good now. It's as it's meant to be. Maybe it was meant to break. Maybe that's what was meant to happen. Gotta run. See you around." Or you could say, "Hey, it's not my fault. If it was that valuable to you, you shouldn't have had it on a podium in the middle of the living room where somebody could pick it up or accidentally knock it over. It's not my fault that it was there, right in the way." Or maybe you would quickly try and help them gather up the pieces, offer to try and get it fixed for them, or maybe find one that looks just like it to replace it with, or maybe offer to buy another vase that could replace it. And then I was imagining other scenarios that could happen. Suppose you have a child that went to play at the neighbor's house, and the kids were playing and accidentally knocked over that same vase. So it's the child's fault that it happened. Would you say, "Well, I wasn't there. I didn't say it happened. It's not my problem"? Or maybe the scenario is you go over to visit your neighbor, and they've accidentally knocked it over, and it's broken on the floor, and they're crying, and what do? How do you respond to them when they broke it? Do you say, "Well, what did you do to make that happen?" Again, why did you have it in the middle of the living room where you could accidentally hit it? What were you thinking? Why did you leave it there that way? You know, it's your fault that this happened. Or would you ask them how you might help? Get down and help them get the pieces. Say, "What can I do that we can work together to see if we can make this better for you?" Well, all these scenarios were running through my head, all these different things that could happen if a vase got broken in somebody's house. And thankfully, in my mind, they were imaginary. And yet I know that sometimes what gets broken isn't an outward vase, but it's our inner heart. It's our inner life. Something happens and we feel broken inside. And this month, we're looking at this idea of living in everyday wonder, the inner life. We're focusing on what's happening in the inner life. And maybe that brokenness comes from something that happened in a prior generation that's been passed down through the generations. Maybe it could be that our heart was broken and we feel like someone did this to us. Someone impacted our life and our heart feels broken. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe it was unintentional, whatever happened. Or maybe it's a choice that we've made ourselves. Maybe we're looking at the choices we've made and we're feeling like, wow, we really made some bad choices and now I'm dealing with a broken heart, a broken inner life. So as we look at this inner life this month in February, February is also known for being the month of love. And that love is what's usually part of our inner life as well. And yet in February, the love that we're usually talking about is romantic love. And I know for some people, it can be really challenging in February. In fact, in the Spirituality and Health magazine for January, February of this year, there's a section where people write in to Rabbi Rami Shapiro, and they ask him questions for his advice. And here's one of the questions. Valentine's Day triggers my insecurities. What if no one sends me a card asking me to be their Valentine? I know that sounds silly, but it still bothers me. Any ideas how I can get over this? And it was his answer that I really loved. He said, my problem with Valentine's Day is the ask, be my Valentine. Rather than asking people to love you, thank those people who already love you. Rather than sending scripted Valentine's Day cards, send handwritten thank you notes to people who have acted lovingly toward you. Be specific about one or two things that they've done for you and why it matters to you. Thank them for already being your Valentine rather than begging them to be so again. So I really liked that shift in focus. Instead of worrying about who's going to recognize that they love me and tell me about it, I recognize all those people that I've already experienced love from by thanking them. So love is part of that great focus that we have when we think about our inner life and how it is that we might repair some of that brokenness. And I would like us to consider this month, as we focus on that, taking love to a higher level, elevating it a bit. Ernest Holmes says in the Science of Mind text, infinite love harmonizes our entire being. The healing currents of life flow through us, taking away every negative thought and manifestation and adjusting our whole physical being to the idea of divine harmony. And I read that and thought, well, what does he mean by infinite love? That sounds like something bigger, but probably inclusive of romantic love, yet something much more. Where and how do we experience and connect in with infinite love? I think that within us, that infinite love is the basis and the root of our inner life. I think it's that which we connect into when we're seeking the healing. But unlike a broken vase that's broken on the outside, sometimes what's broken on the inside isn't as visible. We can't always see what's going on. Again, Ernest Holmes in the Science of Mind text says, we realize that mental healing must also be spiritual healing, for the two cannot be divorced. We know that a belief in duality, a belief in the power of good and the power of evil, has helped to destroy us, and that understanding of unity alone will heal us. We seek to realize that unity with God is all our healing work. And so as I thought about this, I thought about those broken places within and that idea of unity and connecting in with the love and the unity of the whole universe. And again, like I said, sometimes we can't always see those broken places inside. Lately, in our communities at large, in our country, there's been a lot of talk about race and racism. This month is also considered Black History Month. And sadly, at the beginning of the month, a lot of those racist ideas and behaviors started to surface again in reaction to recognizing Black History Month. And to address these issues that are going on in our larger communities, and to help us as centers and communities to create that world that works for everyone, the Home Office has created a committee called the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And the reason they developed this committee was because the people of color within our own movement were saying to us and to the world, there's a piece of us where our hearts are broken. They're still hurting. There's still pain going on in the lives of our communities that's been passed down for generation after generation. There's a part of our life like that beautiful heirloom vase that had been tossed to the floor and broken. And as I thought about that metaphoric scenario that I described earlier, I started asking myself and thinking about the history of this country and what has happened. How our ancestors and founders of this country went into other countries and into established nations on these lands and essentially took those heirloom vases and broke them. They went in and broke up families. They disrupted traditions. They stole people and relocated them and enslaved many of them. And people today are saying there's something still broken, something that has not had the attention it needs to heal, just like the vases that I was describing above. So how do we, as a conscious, caring community, how do we as individuals respond to that brokenness? Is it like in scenario 1 that I mentioned where we go, oops, well, now I understand that racism is a bad thing and I'm not a racist. I know better now. I wouldn't ever keep any slaves myself, and I certainly wouldn't try and remove someone from their land and move them somewhere else. I know better, we know better, so let's just move on. Again, my question is, what happens with what's already been broken? Or, like with the vase, we could also say, I wasn't there. I didn't do it. I didn't mean for anything to get broken. I know within our movement, there are many people who are applauding Home Office for starting the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And I know that there are others who are questioning why we are doing this and how it's relevant today. Why are we focusing on the past, on something that we consider a negative aspect of our history? Why aren't we just teaching that principle of oneness and principle itself and moving forward? So it was those ideas that I was contemplating as I started picturing these different scenarios with the broken vase. And I realized that no matter what, if something is broken, whether I did it, whether a child or an ancestor of mine did it, or whether the person did it themselves, if I walk in, I want to see how it is I could help them repair whatever has been broken. Having had my heart broken lately, I know that it's not easy when someone says, well, it's all good and it's all God. Or if someone reminds me that everything is in divine order. Those two statements are probably true. We do believe that. On the grand scale of things, I believe that it is true. And I know that in my inner life, just saying that still leaves something broken. And again, I picture that vase on the floor. And I think about what it might take to bring about repair and wholeness. And so speaking of picking up pieces off the floor, there are those who say that since it's broken and since the pieces are on the floor, that must be the way it's meant to be. That must be the divine order. That must be where those pieces are supposed to be. These folks say, just leave the pieces on the floor. There's no need for me to participate in helping to piece things together or to create systems that don't continue to break the vases of people's lives. There's no reason for me to get involved with repair or healing of something that's broken because maybe it's God's will that it remains broken. So just leave those pieces right there on the floor. But I believe that we in this New Thought movement, we who study religious science, I believe that we believe in wholeness, in the divine intention to express in the form of wholeness, and that it is our goal as practitioners and practicers of religious science or New Thought to help see that original wholeness, that intention, that idea of wholeness, and to do whatever we can to restore anything that's broken or anything that appears to be less than whole back to its wholeness. And that includes our inner life, and then that inner life being restored to wholeness will be reflected in a much grander whole outer expression. Now, I am aware that by speaking to these topics in this way that I could potentially be pushing some buttons for some people, that there are all kinds of inner reactions and feelings, that our inner life can be disturbed quite easily. It's not my intention to do that, and yet at the same time, I think that if we are concerned about how it is to work with people in this world, I do know that some people's greatest concern is that if we look at those broken pieces, that we might keep our focus there and get stuck. Or that if we look at the broken pieces, we might move into despair and get frozen and become immobile in our lives. And I know that that's a very real possibility. That when we look at the state of our nation, when we look at the pandemic from whatever angle you might be looking at it from, whatever the effects of it are in your life or in the lives of the people around you, when we look at the issues of race that come along with talking about race and looking at making things whole in that arena of our history, or if you're just looking at the lives of people in your life, maybe there's someone that's not doing something that you think they should or could be doing. When we look at all that stuff, it's easy sometimes to move into despair. And when I say despair, I'm thinking that despair is when our inner life just gives up. Despair is when we become numb, when we stop caring, or when we're just completely overwhelmed by what it is that we're experiencing or witnessing. In the book that I finished reading before the last time I talked, Braiding Sweetgrass, the author Robin Wall Kimmerer points out that the goal is not to cause people to take on a lot of guilt. It's not to blame people for whatever has happened in our history or in the experiences that we've had in our lives. And it's not to do that because we don't want to move people into despair. She says, despair made people turn away. It made them write off whatever the issue was in that moment, the brokenness. They wrote it off as a lost cause, and that didn't help the situation. Robin knew, and we as practitioners of religious science know, that despair doesn't repair. So I was glad when I attended our center's conference here in January virtually to hear that there was a lot of different speakers addressing this issue of the temptation to move into despair. That feeling that so much is overwhelming, everything's changing, how we do church, whether we're virtual, whether we're in person, whether we can go live, whether we can't, whether we're Zooming, all of those things just around being a spiritual center, and then the greater communities, the food chains that are interrupted, all of these different things tempt us to move into despair. And so a lot of the different talks were focused on how it is that we maintain our center, our groundedness, our inner life in a peaceful place in the midst of all of this chaotic stuff going on around us. And I think we also recognize, and they address this idea, that our outer life can manifest our inner life. It often is a manifestation of our inner life, and that many of us in this New Thought movement have become really good at putting on a really great outward appearance when our inner life is still broken, when there's still pieces that haven't been put together in our inner life. And when that happens, we're out of balance. When we're trying to express perfection out here and something is still hurting in here, we're out of equilibrium. The goal is wholeness, to where we put the pieces together in our inner life so the outer life is an honest expression of that wholeness. So this month, as we are considering our inner lives and what's happening in them, I'm bringing up this question then of how do we gain that balance between our inner life and our outer life and bring them into equilibrium and into wholeness? And how do we help other people do this in their lives? How do we pick up the pieces and restore our inner lives to wholeness so they can express a wholeness in our outer lives? Again, from Ernest Holmes in the Science of Mind text, we will say then that in spirit we are one with God. But what of the great law of the universe? If we are really one with the whole, we must be one with the law of the whole, as well as one with the spirit of the whole. So I kept focusing on this idea of wholeness, because I think what we are seeking is wholeness. And what I've come to realize is that wholeness does not necessarily mean sameness. When I contemplated the broken vase and the idea of trying to put those pieces together, I realized that a broken vase, a broken heart, broken inner life is never going to look exactly like it was before, but it can be restored to wholeness. I realized that wholeness is not sameness. And a good friend of ours, a member of our congregation, Kay Crady, has been blogging recently about her experience of grief over this last year that she has been going through since her partner of nearly 25 years passed away last April, our dear friend Faith Brown. And in her blog, she brings up the idea of the Japanese practice of kintsugi. And as I read that, it struck me that there is a practice that could help us regain wholeness. Kintsugi literally means gold stitching in Japanese. It is a Japanese art form for mending broken porcelain with lacquer and then dusting it with gold or silver in the cracks, so that the cracks actually become a part of the beauty of the wholeness that's being created as those pieces are put together. Kintsugi approach is made where there's a highlighting of the beauty of what we have, flaws and all, rather than leaving us eternally grasping for more or different, other, or better. It stems from the aesthetic philosophy which cultivates appreciation for flaws. And in this article that I read on kintsugi, he says, the ordinary mind is the way. And what is the ordinary mind? It is the mind in which there are no fabrications, no biased value judgments, no preferences, no time or eternity, no dualistic thoughts such as common and sacred. The broken object gets revived with gold patches. The broken part is truly accepted and cherished as a history of that object, a form of art, rather than getting disguised with immaculate repairing. With kintsugi, the broken object gets transformed into a unique piece of art. It becomes more beautiful and more attractive than ever. It is only one in the world. It is only one in history. There's no other piece that's going to look just like it. The art of kintsugi is healing our mind, our heart from the event and transforming to something greater. The broken part will never be diminished nor disguised. It remains a scar, but as a beautiful, unique design that exists only one in the world. And I just thought, what a beautiful idea. I tried to print out a picture of a vase that had been repaired with kintsugi, and my printer stopped using the blue ink. The whole vase was blue, but you can see the gold lines and how the pieces get put together and restored with something precious. And it even says the value of the vase increases once those pieces are put together and the gold is applied to those lines. So I pictured that broken vase I started out talking about and how it is that we might restore it to wholeness with some of those ideas from kintsugi, where the brokenness becomes a part of its history and its beauty as something new and whole is being created. As we repair something that is broken like that, we have to pick up the pieces and look at them. We have to see then what fits together and then where we need to apply gold to fill in the gaps. And as we do that, wholeness is created, the function is restored, there's a new and grander beauty and a greater value to this newly restored vase. So I imagined applying the philosophy of kintsugi to our inner lives, to those broken pieces, to broken relationships that we might have. How might we bring those pieces together, see what fits, and see what we need to do to create repair and something more beautiful? Ernest Holmes says, life waits upon our discovery of natural laws, our discovery of ourselves, and our discovery of our relationship to the great whole. Again, that idea of wholeness. And what I also notice in a lot of Ernest Holmes' writings is that he talks about working with natural law, and that we work with natural law, and that God expresses through us and is one with nature and is part of that natural law. And so what that means to me now is that you can't put a broken egg back together or a vase so that it's exactly the same as its original form. I can't bring my son back to life. I can't undo what humans have done to each other throughout history. We're not going to change any of that. But we can restore our inner lives to wholeness. We can pick up those pieces, see where they fit together, see how we might create something new and beautiful and make it whole again with its full value, if not more value, and purpose. So as we consider our inner life, think about what inner pieces you might still have that need to be pieced back together in there and held together with something beautiful like gold or silver, and how you might do that. As we think about the greater issues in our society and in the world around us, I encourage you to think of it from that framework of not ignoring what has broken, but how we might look at those pieces and see what can still fit together and what could use our assistance in repairing it. And I encourage us not to say things like, well, I didn't intend to hurt you by making that remark that you happen to interpret as being racist, sexist, or homophobic. I didn't intend to hurt you by using the wrong pronoun when I referred to you. I didn't intend to hurt you by implying that you were inferior than me in any way. I didn't intend to knock over your heirloom vase and break it, your way of life. I didn't intend to break something of value to you. All of these little things we might think of as being little, we might see them as just little chips off the greater vase that we call life. But today there's a term for those little chips that get broken in people's lives, and those are called microaggressions. And when there's lots of those little chips, It does cause harm. It does hurt. It is a piece that is broken. And it's often without intent, but sometimes with intent. And so the question is, how are we going to respond? What is ours to do when it comes to helping to restore people's inner lives and our own inner life to wholeness? What is ours to do, and how are we going to respond? I would encourage us to imagine this philosophy of kintsugi, where we help each other pick up the pieces. We ask, what part can I do in the repair? Again, what pieces fit together, and where do we need to apply gold or silver to make it even more beautiful, to create an amazing wholeness in whatever it is we're putting back together? Next time I speak in a couple weeks, I'm going to be exploring how it is we might piece together our inner life and make it more whole, what tools we have and how we can use them, how we can honestly look at what's going on in our lives on the inner surface to make sure that it's in equilibrium with what's expressing out there. And as Ernest Holmes said in our reading, we seek fragments when the whole is at hand. And so I'm picturing those fragments, and instead of just one, we're looking at bringing them back together as whole. The universe is a perfect, undivided whole, and healing can take place only when one is unified with it. How can anyone then be healed in part? Let us seek wholeness above all else. So in light of that, I took liberty with the children's rhyme that I named the topic of this talk after, and I will conclude by saying, all the king's horses and all the king's men, working with all of us doing the outer work and in, can restore Humpty Dumpty to wholeness again. And so it is. Thank you. So let's just take that to that inner space where our inner life is telling us all kinds of stories, has had all kinds of experiences, some of which we might never allow the outer world to see. And just take those pieces and cherish them, hold them deeper in your heart, see them surrounded with the gold of love. See them pieced back together to an expression of wholeness. And we know as we visualize that wholeness, that Spirit moves in and through us to create the healing process, to allow the wholeness to express from the inward to the outward. We see ourselves being restored to that great awareness and intention that Spirit had for expressing through us in our lives. We allow ourselves to open to an inner wholeness. We allow ourselves to recognize the pieces, honor them, and see their beauty as we start to put them back together and create the wholeness that we are. I give thanks for this time. I give thanks for each person who's been willing to listen and watch virtually. And I know that as life continues to transition, we are still one, we are still whole, we are still connected, and that as we flow with whether we're in person or not, that never changes. We are all one, and from that space of awareness and gratitude, I just say thank you, and so it is.
We are dancers in the light and singing. We are dancers in the light of truth. We are dancers in the light and dreaming. And this dancer made of light is you. La 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 and this dancer made of light is you. Please say that you are with me. Say you feel it deep inside. At first you may not know it speaks so gently, but you'll see in time. Life inside knows so surely what is right and what is true. A voice inside speaks so purely. Listen me, listen you. We are dancers in the light and singing. We are dancers in the light of truth. We are dancers in the light and dreaming. And this dance I made of light is you.
We are so grateful that you are continuing to support us in all of our changes and evolutions. I do promise we will be back together in person soon, I hope, but stay tuned, like I said earlier, or like Judy said earlier. At this time, we are shifting as to who is receiving 10% of all that comes through here. And this month, the Project Linus is who we will be giving 10% to. And this is a group that provides a love, a sense of security, warmth, and comfort to children who are seriously ill, traumatized, or otherwise in need through giving them the gift of a new handmade blanket or Afghan that's been lovingly created by volunteer blanketeers, they're called. And so they what we give them will go toward getting the materials to make blankets, whether they're crocheted or sewed. And I found an article in the Las Cruces Bulletin from December 31st, 2021, and it said that our local Project Linus reported that despite canceled blanket making sessions and meetings in parking lots because of the pandemic, Project Linus volunteers still made about 4,000 blankets in 2021. And these blankets are then donated to local hospitals or to any one of 39 organizations in Las Cruces and Deming, such as police departments and fire departments, and then they can give them to children in moments of need as the needs arise. So 10% of all that comes through the center this month in February will be given to the Project Linus so that they can help make sure these children feel warm and cozy as much as they can during traumatized times. Just a piece, a way of helping to repair, like I talked about earlier. So thank you so much for all that you do to support us. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned, watch the newsletter, and call the office, check our website for when we are going to meet in person again. For now, just stay safe, stay warm. Love you all. Have a wonderful February.